Yes, welcome to my podcast. Today we'll address the topic of relationships and voice dialogue. Relationship is one of the key um, pillars of this whole work of voice dialogue and transformational psychology. In fact, voice dialogue developed out of a relationship of a couple, Hal and Sidra, when they met, and they started. They were aware of the complexity of the relationship. That it's not just one person you have a relationship with, but you have a relationship with a whole group of different subpersonalities. And some are in favor of the relationship, and others may be, against it. Hal had a part that was like a patriarch, and wasn't so in admiration of women or a woman. And Sidor had a part, the matriarch, the inner matriarch, that thought men were very simple beings, only interested in one thing, and if you know how they work, you can manipulate them. So if these parts were to take over, that would be probably the end of that intimate relationship. And they were able to handle it, and what they did is they would speak to these parts. They would do a voice dialogue session, like Hal would work with the inner matriarch in Sidra, and thereby that part felt recognized and would not work against the situation. And the other way around, Sidra had a session with Hal and with the patriarch, and actually liked the energy of the patriarch. And the patriarch felt honored and seen, and also in that way, it wouldn't take over unconsciously. And that helped the work for each of them to separate from these voices. So they are not just the patriarch or not just the matriarch. They would be parts of this. And on the other hand, to embrace the underlying vulnerability. So vulnerability is extremely important to share it in a relationship. So if you want to have a relationship, or if you're in a relationship, make sure you can be vulnerable in it. Means you first have to be aware of the vulnerability in yourself. That's number one. And if you are not able to do that, it's difficult in a relationship. So be aware of it yourself and be able to share with it. So step one when I work with couples is see if they can be in touch with the vulnerability, and if they can make what we call linkage. So if they can connect with the partner in a way that the vulnerability is present. And that's not just in the words, it's not mental. This is very much an energy. So to feel it physically, to make a connection. And we call the linkage connection. And that gives depth to the whole contact. So these are two important things for being able to separate from strong selves that make no linkage, like the patriarch and the matriarch, but there are other selves, like the mind could be very strong, not make any linkage. And on the other hand, to separate after the separation, also to be able to connect with the vulnerability and make contact. And so some parts can make contact much more easily than others. So that's an important step. In relationship, we also see another phenomenon, and that has to do with the disowned selves. So the selves in us that we don't own, that have been suppressed, that we call them disowned, they are often projected on the other person. And that can come out as a total admiration. Sometimes when people fall in love, they just see their disowned self blossoming up, They totally admire the other person, and if somebody has disowned their, let's say, practical side, they may fall in love with a man or a woman who's totally organized and practical, and they love it. And in the honeymoon phase, later on, that organizational skill becomes very irritating. So the disowned selves come up as admiration, but also as irritation. So the parts that we really find very difficult can be our disowned selves. And they are like a fuel in a negative relationship, in a negative bonding pattern. So they can cause havoc. They can make a difficult life. Yeah. So in a relationship, we see all these different aspects are there, and it's actually pretty complex. So if you want to know more about it, you can study it further. Thank you.